As we continue our progress, taking a fresh look into previous American airport expansions episodes, we take a look at an airport in Houston that has been undergoing a significant renovation and expansion, and is touted as some of the most significant projects since the airport opened back in the 60s. What's going on, everyone? My name's School Titanium 68, and today we're going to be talking about two projects at George Bush Intercontinental. ITRP, which is George Bush's Intercontinental Terminal Redevelopment Plan, as well as the United Airlines Terminal B redevelopment. Right after this. But first off, let's talk a little bit of history over George Bush Intercontinental Airport. Opening in 1969, then named Houston Intercontinental Airport, was meant to be a replacement for the William P. Hobby Airport located in Southeast Houston. Does this sound a little bit familiar to y'all? To me, kind of sounds like the same thing that Dallas and Fort Worth would do with DFW Airport. Move everyone out of Love Field and Greater Southwest and then close them down. The Hobby Airport, like Love Field, still operates today as a key hub for Southwest. With George Bush Intercontinental being one of United's largest hubs, this wasn't the case when it opened. At the time, the main airlines were American, Braniff, Delta, Continental, Eastern Air, National Airlines, and the former Texas International Airlines. At least for domestic places. I believe that the reason why United has such a large presence at George Bush Intercontinental is because of Continental Airlines and Texas International Airlines. Now, in 1982, Texas International Airlines was struggling and merged with Continental. And then, ironically, about 30 years later, Continental Airlines was struggling and merged with United. So, with them both being based in Texas, you could kind of see why that United, which is a Chicago-based airlines, still operates out of Houston. Now, international routes at George Bush has been steadily growing at the airport over the last few decades. In 1990, Terminal D, also known as the Mickey Leland International Arrivals Building, opened to the public with Terminal E, which is where United flies all of their international routes out of, opened in 2003. Both terminals are for international flights, with Terminal E strictly for United and Terminal D used for everyone else. Now, fun fact, in the late 80s, the airport was being looked at being renamed after Mickey Leland, an African-American House of Representative who died in an aviation accident in Ethiopia. He was a House of Representative for the Texas 18th District, which serves a good amount of northern Houston, at least the Houston metropolitan area. However, they decided to name the new international terminal after Mickey Leland, and the airport was renamed after George H.W. Bush, the 41st President of the United States. Now, because George Bush Intercontinental is a relatively newer airport, like DFW Airport, there's a lot of potential for this airport, which brings us to George Bush Intercontinental's ITRP. Now, this stands for the IAH Terminal Redevelopment Plan. Now, IAH is the FAA's call sign for George Bush Intercontinental. You might think it would be HOU, but that's still the call sign for William P. Hobby Airport. Now, in this ITRP, they do focus on terminals D and E. Now, let me try and zoom in here with Terminal D and E being the international terminals at Houston Hobby, and with them being across the roadway from each other, what they've decided to do is they have decided to build a bunch of new stuff, specifically for Terminal D, which you guys can still see right over here, and then a bunch of other stuff just in and around D to connect both terminals D and E. Because most of these projects are starting to open up and should be done by either the end of this year, which is 2024, or going to early 2025, we're going to take a look at what's gone on and what's still under construction. So to start off with, let's look at the Mickey Leland International Building. Now, this is also where this is the Federal Inspections Services Building. What they're doing here is, since these are both international terminals, what you would have to do is you would have to just come up here, you check in for Terminal D, and I don't remember if Terminal E is in here too. I think Terminal E's check-in is at the building here. But what they've done, and this probably shows a much better picture of it, there is a brand new international central processor. So what this has is this will allow for up to 17 security checkpoints. It's going to have all the new ticketing for not only all the airlines here, but also for United, for Terminal E. So everyone's going to move in here, and it's going to be a pretty decent thing for the airport. I mean, with with a bunch of these other expansions going on, I mean, Terminal E again is the main internet, is the internet where all international flights and some domestic for United fly out of. This new central processor is really going to help Terminal E, well, at least both United and every other international carrier when it comes to wanting to fly out of DFW, well, out of George Bush Intercontinental. Now, going off of Terminal D, what they've done actually a huge renovation and rework of the terminal itself. Now, alongside a modern interior refresh, again, they moved their ticketing and departure curbside facilities offsite into the new international central processor, which I just showed y'all. The reason for that is because they wanted to make more space, and they wanted to reconfigure the airport, well, at least terminals D and E, as just concourses. So it kind of think like what Denver has with the 3-tiered concourses. You just have one place that you check in and then you just go. Now, of course, in some of the other for some of the other terminals, they do have their own stuff. But for but at least for Terminal D and E, it's all in one place. This is being, now again, with that central processor, a lot of the airlines are going to start to move out at the end of the summer of 2025, and then United Airlines will follow suit next winter. Now, one of the other projects that recently just opened, as in, I'm not kidding when I say this opened about 5.5 weeks ago, is the Terminal D West Pier. So that is what this is right here. What they've done is they've added 6 wide-body gates. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it can be configured for up to 10 narrow-body gates. Now, again, not every single airline flies wide bodies and narrow body. Well, flies wide bodies for all international flights. I mean, look, I know from Houston, I don't think you really need a 787 or an A350 to fly to Cancun every week if you have like 5 or 6 daily flights. You can just use narrow bodies because it's far enough away that you don't need a wide body for that. But again, this has added about 100 and hold on, how much was it? So this has added about 160,000 square feet to Terminal D, which has actually increased Terminal D square footage overall to just under 500,000 square feet. Now, as I've said before, this does comprise of 6 wide body gates, and I was wrong. It's 11 narrow body gates. I don't know why I thought it was 10. I mean, you can kind of see it here. So with the narrow body gates, there's like 11 jet bridges there. With most wide bodies, you have to have at least 2 jetways, especially for something like an A350 or a Boeing 777. Those are some pretty big planes, so you kind of need some of these, but you can easily configure this to like 11 gates so that you can have more narrow bodies on there if you need to fly a narrow body going in there. Now, on top of this, there's also going to be 16 new retail and dining concession spaces, among other amenities, that will be a part of this. Now, moving over to the east side of Terminal D, there's going to be a new baggage handling building. Now, this new building is going to utilize practices including the TSA's electronic bagging screening program, as well as IATA's track and trace practices to help reduce the mishandling of baggage. Now, even though this is not a huge project, it's still a significant project at Terminal D. Now, again, with the addition of 6 wide-body gates and can be configured up to 11 narrow bodies, more and more international airlines are starting to show interest in the flying into Houston, and hence why they've added those gates. And having a state-of-the-art baggage system is going to be important for George Bush Intercontinental. And for those of you that are wondering where this is this new building right here on the very southeast side of Terminal D. So this building here is used for the baggage handling system, and this is going to be used to get like all the baggage coming out of Terminal D in order to bring it into the central processing where the Federal Inspection Service building is. Because since this is where all the departures and arrivals will come in from, they're going to have to be able to have a good baggage handling facility to help with all that for the airline. I already talked about that. I already talked about the International Central Processor. But again, what they're doing is it's going to be built off the west side of the Federal Inspection Services building, and it's going to consolidate all the ticketing, departure, and arrival halls into one building for Terminals D and E. The ticketing was inside the actual Mickey Leland terminal building for United, and actually, wait, hold on. My bad. I said this wrong. So the ticketing for the Mickey Leland International Terminal was originally a part of that, and then the international ticketing, departure, and arrival halls for United were done at Terminal E. Now, with all of this, with the consolidation of both Terminal D and E's ticketing, departure, and arrival halls, the Terminals D and E are strictly just going to be used as concourses. And with that, and I could probably show you all this on the map here. So this is the parking garage here. What they've done is they've added an additional 2 levels on top. And I think they did the same thing here as well on this one, so that it can handle the increased traffic with the 6 new gates, but also be much closer to the international central processor, and people can, well, actually find parking. Now, however, the ITRP is not the only program that's ongoing at George Bush Intercontinental. Now, last year in 2023, United announced an almost $2.6 billion project rebuild for almost all of Terminal B on the north and south side. $1.9 billion is coming from United, and then an additional $650 million is coming from the city of Houston. Now, because George Bush Intercontinental is a hub for United, this airline wants to utilize the airport and also grow its network out of George Bush Intercontinental Airport, splitting into 2 separate projects, one encompassing the north side and one encompassing the south side. This, I think, is the single largest investment at the airport outside of the ITRP project that we just discussed. Now, starting off on the north side, United wants to build 2 brand new passenger concourses. These would replace the 2 1969 era flight stations that house 12 gates. Now, if you guys are wondering, what do you guys mean by that? So you can't really see it here because, again, they're kind of rebuilding all this. But if we were to go back to about 2016, or maybe a better one like 2019, these are the 2 flight stations. This was like the check-in area here, and then you would walk in. You've got 6 gates. I think you got 3, 4, you got 7 gates here, and then you have, actually no, you got 8 here, and you got 4 on this one. Again, this was built when the airport opened up in 1969. It's very old. It didn't really utilize much for the airport. But what they're going to do is they're going to build 2 new concourses on that side that are going to house 22 narrow-body gates. Now, this will increase the north side gates number by 10, but as we talked about the south side, this is actually it's not really going to increase the overall amount of gates at Terminal B. But with what they're doing on the south side, this will increase the amount of seat capacity that is available for United coming out of this airport. Now, on the south side, there are currently 30 gates, but unlike the old flight stations, which had jet bridges for each gate, they utilize air stair gates. And I can show you what I mean by that, because this is from 2019. So with air stair gates, you'd have your own like central building here, but then you could take any of these things to walk out to your gate, then you walk outside, and then you just walk up a set of stairs, and you walk in there. Now, the problem with that is this can only really be used for regional jets. And again, it kind of shows in the same thing here. There's a couple of places that have looked like they have gotten jet bridges, like especially on this side of the terminal, but there are still good portions of it that still use air stairs. It's slow, but it's taking time. Now, what this is going to do here is it's actually going to decrease the gate numbers from 30 to 18. So instead of having 30 air stair gates, there's going to be 18 jetway gates. And what they're going to do is that central pier that came off of the main building is also going to be demolished in due time. And why would they do that? Because that is going to be all narrow body jets. It is not, it'll still accommodate regional jets, but they're trying to add more space for the larger jets like the 737 and the A320 family, which are 2 of like the main domestic jets that almost every airline in the world uses. Now, with the north and south side gates getting renovations and expansions, Terminal B is actually going to be slightly smaller by 2 gates. Now, even though before this project started, Terminal B had a total of 42 gates. So they had 30 air stair gates on the south side and 12 gates on the north side. But now that's already torn down, the north side's already torn down, and they're still working on the south side. And when this project is complete, Terminal B will have 40 gates, about 2 gates less than what they had at Terminal B. However, this is not the only project that Terminal B will see. Inside the current processor, they're going to be adding a 222,000 square foot expansion, which more than doubles the size of the Terminal B processor. With this new expansion and the renovation of the current 218,000 square feet that's there, there's going to be a new baggage hall, baggage handling system, ticket hall, security checkpoint, and additional airline and airport support spaces. So basically, they're going to go through, completely gut it, or at least they'll work on one side and then they'll gut the other side and build that up. All of the security screenings, at least for here, are actually going to be moved to the third floor so that they can offer convenient access to the concourses as well as concessions from the second floor. Now, as we wrap up, with the Houston area metro growing rapidly, just like pretty much every other metro area in Texas, Houston needs an airport that can facilitate the growth needed for Houston, especially for international. I mean, I don't think William P. Hobby does any sort of international flights outside of what Southwest does, but George Bush Intercontinental, I don't think William P. Hobby has a customs facility. I might be wrong. Please put down in the comments if Hobby does have a customs facility for Southwest, then that would make sense. Because I know Southwest does fly out of both Hobby and Intercontinental, but I don't know if they fly international out of Hobby. Now, unlike DFW Airport, which is also the biggest hub for American, which is also the second biggest hub in the world, George Bush Intercontinental is an airport that will see growth as United starts to utilize its Houston hub a lot more. Now, again, United essentially established their hub at George Bush Intercontinental due to the merger with Continental, which 30 years before that had merged with Texas International. And with that, we're going to end the video right here. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video about George Bush Intercontinental Airport. If you liked what you just watched, leave a like down below and make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. If you don't want to miss any future videos, whether it be these aviation videos or any of our other contents like our mountain bike videos, or automotive videos, or even our weather live streams, make sure you guys hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified when each of the new videos drop, as well as when our live streams go live. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Peace.